Think about the modern concept of buying a house or a piece of property. You save up, you sign a deed, and boom, it's absolutely yours, right? It's literally a foundational idea in today's economy. But what if I told you that historically in Nepal, the concept of private, absolute land ownership didn't really exist, that the state essentially owned all of it? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to look at the fascinating historical evolution of Nepalese land tenure systems, and we'll trace exactly how land transformed from this supreme state asset into the highly financialized private property we see today. Okay, let's dive into this. We're covering Section 1, Ancient Roots, State Ownership. Section 2, Land as a Paycheck. Section 3, Shift to Private Rights. Section 4, the 1964 Land Reforms. Section 5, Modernizing the Records, and finally, Section 6, Land Today, Production versus Speculation. Section 1, Ancient Roots, State Ownership. All right, to set the stage, we're starting way back in the Licchavi era, which ran from roughly 400 to 750 AD. This is where the core philosophy of land rights in Nepal was really firmly established. The info we're unpacking today comes straight from deep academic research, historical documents, and land journals that detail Nepal's agrarian history. And what these sources reveal is that land was the ultimate source of wealth, power, and social prestige. Because the economy was entirely agricultural, whoever controlled the dirt controlled the society. And in ancient Nepal, that supreme landlord was the crown. The most fundamental concept you need to understand here is Raikar. Raikar was the traditional form of state ownership. You didn't actually own the land, the state did. Farmers were basically just tenants of the king. You were granted occupancy rights, which meant you could use the land, and even pass those use rights down to your kids, but only as long as you paid your annual land taxes to the government. If you missed your taxes, the state would just take the land right back. But, the state also knew it had to preserve its culture. Enter the Guti system. Dating all the way back to that ancient Licchavi era, the state and later on wealthy individuals would assign land to charitable, religious, or philanthropic community trusts. The income generated by farming this specific Guti land was legally locked in to pay for the upkeep of temples, the running of vibrant local festivals, and taking care of the poor. It was honestly a brilliant, sustainable way to fund cultural heritage long before modern government budgets even existed. Section 2. Land as a Paycheck. So as the nation unified and grew under the Shah and Rana rulers, the government hit a massive problem. They had a huge administration and army to run, but very little actual cash. Their solution? Give away the one thing they had plenty of, land. This brings us to Birta. Birta was a system of tax-free land grants given by the state to elites, royal family members, or individuals for their service and loyalty. The ruling class basically bought the absolute loyalty of the military and political elite by gifting them vast tracts of state land, transferring the right to collect taxes on that land from the state to these new private landlords. Get this, by 1952, a staggering 36% of state farmland was in the form of Birta. And, of course, these elites wanted to make absolutely sure the state wouldn't suddenly take these incredibly lucrative Bunta grants back. Our sources highlight this amazing, genuinely terrifying ancient Sanskrit inscription that they often slapped onto these grants. It reads, "Anybody who confiscates the land granted by him or by others shall in his next life be a worm living in human excrement for 60,000 years. Wow. They didn't have a modern Supreme Court to protect their property rights, so they just went straight for the ultimate spiritual threat. But hey, it wasn't just the mega elites getting paid in land. The everyday nuts and bolts functioning of the government relied on it too, through systems called Jagir and Rakam. Jagir was land assigned to civil and military employees until they died or left their job. Rakam was land assigned temporarily to laborers for specific manual work. Think of it like the historical equivalent of a modern direct deposit paycheck, just paid in soil instead of cash. Just look at the specific, everyday people who survived on these Rakam land grants. We're talking about carpenters, bricklayers, mail carriers, caretakers, and even kusule, traditional musicians. They provided their vital labor to the state, and in return, they got a piece of land to grow food and feed their families. Section 3. Shift to Private Rights. Now, this massive, totally unequal system of state ownership and elite land grants was destined to hit a breaking point. By the 1950s, the autocratic Rana regime had fallen, and a democratic shift was taking place. But down at the grassroots level, peasant revolts, many of them influenced by communist groups, were erupting, especially in the Terai region. The farmers who were actually out there sweating and working the land were demanding rights. They were pushing this new government to finally address centuries of historical injustices.
The first massive domino to fall? The Berta system. After facing immense pushback from landlords who, naturally, wanted to keep all their tax-free wealth, the government passed the 1959 Berta Abolition Act. This officially terminated those elite Berta grants and converted them back into taxable Rykar land. It was a highly contentious, but absolutely crucial step toward dismantling the old feudal land structure. Section 4. The 1964 Land Reforms. And that brings us to the absolute climax of our historical journey, 1964. This is the year that marks the most significant legal overhaul of the agrarian structure in Nepal's history. It was designed to completely restructure who owned land and exactly how much they were allowed to own. The 1964 Act tried to fix all that unequal distribution through three main steps. Step 1, impose strict land ceilings. This capped how much land one family could own so the excess could be distributed to the landless. Step 2, abolish the jamindari system, which removed those powerful local landlords who controlled tax collection. And Step 3, secure tenancy rights and strictly cap the rent that a landlord could charge a tenant farmer at 50% of the main crop. Now, our sources do point out that historically entrenched power dynamics meant landlords often found clever ways to dodge these rules. But legally speaking, this was a massive paradigm shift.
Section 5. Modernizing the land records.
Because let's be real, you can't enforce land rights if you don't actually know who owns what, or where the property lines even are. Pre-1978, the system was incredibly informal. Records were often unwritten, relying entirely on oral agreements and local tax collectors. There was a severe lack of actual legal deeds. But post-1978, with the Land Revenue Act, everything changes. We see the introduction of exact cadastral maps, mathematical land grading, and formal plot surveys. Real property was finally being strictly defined by legal, surveyed boundaries, rather than just local tradition.
And part of this modernization, which actually started way back with Chandra Shamsher in 1907, but was refined over the decades, was classifying the land for taxation. They mathematically graded the land based on its production capability. A bowl was first grade, highly productive irrigated land that paid the highest tax, all the way down to chahar, the fourth grade, non-irrigated, lowest quality land. It was this incredibly structured mathematical way to value the earth itself.
Section 6. Land today. Production versus speculation. Which brings us to the present day, where land's economic purpose has drastically, totally changed from its historical roots. Academic research shows a staggering 100 times increase in land prices over the last 20 years in areas like Chitwan. Why? Well, largely because of a massive influx of cash remittances from Nepalese citizens working abroad. Land has shifted from being primarily a resource for growing food to becoming a highly expensive, speculative asset. People are literally just buying land to park cash and watch the price go up. And compound that speculation with severe land fragmentation. Because inheritances legally divide parental land equally among the children, over generations, the parcels have become incredibly tiny. Our sources reveal that this fragmentation, combined with those sky-high prices, has forced 71% of surveyed households to seek alternative ways to make a living. The parcels are just way too small and way too expensive to farm profitably anymore. So the big, crucial point we're left with is this. As land transforms from a sacred heritage and a foundational farmer's livelihood into an unaffordable, highly fragmented speculative asset, what is the future for Nepal's landless poor? We have journeyed from ancient kings owning absolutely everything to modern markets pricing almost everyone out. It's a profound shift, and it's one that's going to define Nepal's economic future. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope this helps structure your understanding of a truly complex history.